It is a webinar on the impact of COVID, particularly to the transport sector and aviation sector, to be very specific, in the EAC region. And we all know that the region, like other parts of the world, we've been affected by COVID. And of course, a number of sectors have been affected. And therefore, of course, where we are now, as the East African Business Council, we have, of course, been trying to encourage all sectors to move forward strongly, to ensure that, of course, we come together and share views. We've been organizing these webinars, based on different sectors. And of course, we've been trying to pick your thoughts, particularly our members, those in private sector. And we've also been inviting, of course, governments to be part of it, so that they can be able also to, understand what is facing the private sector. And therefore, the strong partnership between the private sector and the public sector is very key, particularly when we are dealing with COVID. And so far, we have seen this work very well, particularly at the national level. We have seen, of course, private sector and governments collaborate during this very difficult moment, where, of course, businesses have been adversely affected. And even to be very specific, sectors like aviation and even hotel industry, tourism, they have suffered. Hotels, a big number of them are closed. Some of them, of course, have started now reopening. And that I must appreciate it goes along with the courage that, of course, businessmen and the private sector are investing to face the COVID, to the pandemic. And therefore, transport sector is very key to us, not only to East Africa, and not only to partner states of the East African community, but to the entire world. We all know it is basically transport sector that facilitates trade and movement of goods and services across the world. And therefore, when transport is affected, what it means is that supply chains are disrupted, and therefore we have to find ways of getting out of this. We know that the manufacturing sector, for example, has been affected by movement of where they get or they source their raw materials. And if transport is affected, it means, again, other sectors will be affected. And that is why, of course, the East African Business Council felt it's important that we bring aviation sector together. One, I know, of course, most of the partner states have announced that they'll be reopening soon. And you've seen last week, East African Business Council has also released a press statement asking partner states to even open the regional space. Because what we are looking at is, can we go back to business? Can we get back into business? And that's what we are looking at. And that's why we are asking you, the actually on the ground, those who are actors, the airlines, you are the pride of this region. And of course, if you are back, back to skies, it is good for us as business. And that's why we are saying, as countries do domestic opening, and we have seen that happen, of course, United Republic of Tanzania has been, of course, in the air for the last, months since, of course, COVID started. We have seen Kenya now, of course, opening today for domestic flights. We have seen Rwanda started, I think, their domestic and chartered, flights about last month, and of course planning to open for the international space 1st of August, and so is Kenya, and I know so is Uganda. And so we want to know basically what preparations have you made as our airlines? What confidence are you giving to the private sector, to businesses, and to citizens in East Africa as we start preparing to getting back to normal? And that's why we have this webinar. Of course, there will be some rules to it, and the rules are that if you are not speaking, please mute your microphone or your video. And of course, it's important that is one way of respecting other panelists And of course, we contribute to the goal. We have said already is about the aviation sector. The regional perspectives, we want to understand how the intra-EAC trade has been affected by lack of course, operations of the aviation. Of course, there will be questions. We'll be interacting with all those participants and so many joining this meeting. We'll be interacting through our social media platforms, through our tweets, through our Facebook and Instagram and the rest. So you are free to send your questions to the chat room. And of course, for transparency, this meeting will be recorded. And of course, the report again will be shared. And so that is why we are here today. So I just want, before we proceed, and I've given out the objectives of this webinar, we want to come out with clear regional recommendations that are going to inform policy, governments, and other policymakers, and even business community on how we want to proceed, how we want to recover from this crisis. And your views will be taken. We're going to run with them to make sure that we share with all the stakeholders. And the idea is, how do we rebound back to business? How do we get back into doing business? So we'll be, I know, of course, you've been affected like other sectors, but of course, how do you plan? What are the preparations? And with that, we'll be having, of course, our honorable panelists. And now we have Mr. Alan Kilavuka. You are with us, the Group CEO of Kenya Airways. Of course, we have the COO of Rwanda Air. And then we have engineer, of course, Matindi, the managing director and the CEO of Air Tanzania Company Limited. And then, of course, we have yes, and then of course we have Conwell Muleya, the CEO of Uganda Airlines, and of course we have Patrick Mwandri, the CEO again of Precision Air. And thank you all of you for joining us. Just for purposes of confirming that you are present, if I mention, please confirm that you are present so that we appreciate you. Patrick Mwandri, are you there?
Yes, I'm around. Thank you very much. I'm around.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Karibu sana. Do you have Conwell? Conwell, you're there? Conwell Muleya, you're there? Uganda Airlines. And then we have Engineer Matindi, MD and CEO of Air Tanzania Company Limited. We had spoken earlier. I know you're there.
Thank you. I'm available.
Alan Kilavuka, you are there, the Group MD and CEO of Kenya Airways, Pride of Africa. You are there, please confirm.
I'm here.
Hey, fantastic. Then we are saying we are full house. I can only confirm that now we are full house. And the idea is that before we get out of this webinar, we must give confidence to travelers, to citizens, to businesses, that indeed we are ready to fly, we are ready to start doing business. And I think that is what we'll be expecting from our eminent panelists. And therefore, I want to be sure that as you leave also, tell us what you prepare to make sure that that you're in business. And I don't know whether we have from Rwanda, Mr. Ngobena, you're there? Ngobena Mikhail, Rwanda? Rwanda, yeah? Yeah. I saw the messenger that is online, so fine. I think that being the case, and of course, we have given the background of why we are having this webinar. I've said that we've had webinars in different sectors. East African Business Council is the apex body of the private sector in East Africa. And this is foreseen in the treaty establishing East Africa. We are saying it matches, of course, the community is people-centered, but then it is private sector-led. And therefore, East African Business Council being the voice of the private sector in the region, we felt it's important that we continue communicating and talking and exchanging with our members and with all of you. And also from different sectors to tell us what preparations that you've made as we prepare for recovery from COVID. Because we must make sure that business, and it is the business of business to do business. And therefore, if we are not doing business, then we are not in business. Therefore, that's why we are here. So be ready to tell us, of course, what preparations that you have made. And as I said earlier, our call beginning of the week, we said, why can't we open our regional airspace? Why can't we leave it? And if we are doing it at the domestic, can then we do maybe in a week's time do regional, open skies for the region, and then later, as you are planning to do, most of you, we do now international, because we don't term East Africa as international. East Africa is regional, is a region, is a community, is a family, and that is why the treaty is there, bringing us all together. And imagine now if we are saying that 35% of the world trade is done by aviation, and aviation is not working. What are we saying? What does that mean for business? And that is why we are here to interact and make sure that we contribute to the meaning of this. So now that we have all the panelists on board, I would want to straight away to appreciate the work some of you have done. We know that Air Tanzania, we have been in the skies for the last, I don't know, you'll tell us, but for the last, I don't know whether you've ever crossed. We want to congratulate, of course, Kenya Airways. They started their domestic flights today, this morning. And I want to thank you, Alan, for taking time, aware that you are doing the maiden flights to Mombasa and at some point, but then you got time to be with us. So I want to thank you and all those others, your CEOs, for taking time to be with us. Let me start with you, Alan. And I know that it has not been easy for Kenya Airways. And we know everyone calls Kenya Airways Pride of Africa. Can you confidently tell listeners and, of course, business community and the citizens of East Africa that possibly you are still retaining that pride even after COVID? And how do you want to make sure that you, even with the magnitude of the damage caused in the aviation sector and even business in general, how are you planning as Kenya Airways to adapt? How did you adopt? How have you managed, for example, from the month of March up to the June? And of course, aware that interruptions have been there, passengers not happening and cargo volumes not there. What is the future of Kenya Airways? And of course, post-COVID, where do you see yourself? Do you want to confidently tell all of us that indeed Kenya Airways will remain the pride of Africa? Because Kenya Airways is a regional, basically, player. And therefore, East Africans would want to know. And we have been getting a lot of calls from across. And when is Kenya Airways opening? We've been getting from all over. And I think you can tell us what preparations and what is the future of the airline post-COVID. Please, over to you, Alan. And karibu sana. Sorry, before Alan, I think it's only fair that I introduce myself. My name is Peter Mathuki. I'm the CEO of the East African Business Council. We are based in Arusha. I think with all fairness, I know, Alan, you know me. That's why you are easily calling me. Over to you, Alan.
Okay. Peter, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you first of all for inviting me, and thank you for setting up this important discussion. First, right from the onset, I just wanted to request that you will have to excuse me because, like you rightly pointed out, today And also, you need to tell me if you can hear me or not, because sometimes this connection can go.
You're very clear. You're very clear. You're very clear.
Okay.
You're okay.
Yeah. So I was excusing myself early because I will have to drop off, and like you rightly pointed out, I'm currently in Mombasa. We did the inaugural flight this morning, which was flagged off by our cabinet secretary, in charge of transport, and we're here with the governor of Mombasa, deputy governor of Mombasa. And we are going through some functions. I've excused myself just to be with you for a period of time. And so I just want to request you to release me a little bit early. I can only be here for a maximum of another 20 minutes. So I'm sorry to not to be here for the full time, but I'm sure you will understand. Okay.
I understand. Yeah, Alan, proceed.
Yeah. So Peter, you asked a good question, which you said, what is the future of, I guess you said Kenya Airways, and how does that look like for us, and whether we are still the pride of Africa? So you asked a couple of questions, but that question can be asked to any other airline in the world. Any airline that you speak to, you need to ask exactly the same questions. What is the future of aviation? What's the future of this airline, and so on and so forth? Because aviation has gone through similar challenges across the world, and interventions by government in particular have been very similar. And this situation has been brought to us, of course, not because of anything that we have done, but because of the pandemic. I think the most important, in my opinion, the more important question to ask is how do we respond to the challenges that we currently have? And I can share with you what we are doing in Kenya Airways to respond to some of the things we are doing to respond to those challenges. And I'm sure my eminent panelists, colleague panelists, will also have a few things to add to that. Most importantly is to conserve cash, because cash has been, we have been bleeding a lot of money, because if you don't have revenue, if you don't have a source of money, then you obviously are in a situation where you're only spending and not earning. So that was the first thing that we have done, and many other airlines have done a similar thing. And there are many interventions that we used to try and limit the cash bleed or cash burn that we were having. Then we turned around and said, so how do we try and make some money that will help sustain us up to some period of time? And so that's what we've been doing. So we've been focusing on cargo. So we converted at least 6 of our aircraft, passenger aircraft, and repurposed them for cargo. And some of these aircraft were the narrow body aircraft. Some of them are the wide aircraft. And so we've been doing a lot of moving equipment, moving vegetables from East Africa to Europe, moving PPEs from China to Africa, and then distributing it. And if you look at that particular one, I think it is something to be proud of. You asked whether we are still the pride of Africa. We've been playing a very key, pivotal role even in this period of time when there's a bit of a lull, to try and catalyze or help to inject some life in the economies that have been really severely affected by moving at least goods. We've also done some moving of evacuation flights. We've been moving people back from Europe into Kenya, and moving Europeans who are stuck here back to Europe. So we've done a few of those things, and that has in some way helped us to bring in some revenue. But to be completely fair, it is not near enough to cover our costs, not near enough. And so we have also gone a step further and really looked at how we operate as an airline, and we've had to recalibrate. We are actually looking at the network. We have to resize it to respond to the demands that we are seeing in front of us. So those are some of the things that we are doing, but the importance of aviation cannot be overstated. Aviation is critical. In Kenya in particular, for example, we directly and indirectly contribute at least 4% to the GDP. So that's about $3.2 billion. And I said many things. If you look at aviation in particular, we contribute over 400,000 jobs. again, indirectly or directly. And I'm sure it is the same if you go to Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, and so on and so forth. And so for me, the important thing is at this stage, where we have this kind of crisis, it is very important for us to come together and see how do we support each other to stimulate the market so that people can start and continue traveling. So I would want to stop there, Peter, so that I can allow other people to contribute, so that I can also listen to others. Thank you.
No, thank you, Alan. I think even before you leave, I appreciate, of course, that is a part of confidence. I was expecting you as the CEO of Kenya was to tell business community in the region that indeed you still fly the Pride of Africa flag. And indeed, I know it is all the sectors and all of us affected by this, but together we shall overcome. But before you leave, you may wish to possibly tell me, and I think this is coming because I had a discussion with you in the past. You know very well that there are a number of agreements that East African partner states have signed bilaterally on particularly affecting a number of agreements. What is your take on the implementation, particularly those affect aviation sector? And again, in the light of COVID now outbreak, do you think it's the high time now we want to start now taking these some of these agreements and try to see how they get implemented? And do you think if at all they're implemented, they're going to have any impact to the aviation sector? Yeah, and what are the challenges that you encounter with some of these bilateral services agreements? We call them BASAs. Yeah, what is your take? What is your take on this, Alan?
Yeah, thank you, Peter. On this one, I will say something that is probably relevant to all my colleagues in the East African community with regard to BASAs. Now, my recommendation or my take on this particular issue is I do believe that it is time for us to domesticate air travel. I would really like to see a situation where we can have these buses reflect the fact that we are in one community, and so that traveling from one place to another, we are not subjected to the kind of taxes that we as airlines across the board are subjected to. You know, when I land in Entebbe or in Kigali or in Dar es Salaam and so on and so forth, instead of paying $50, we should be paying $6, each of us. And that way it reduces the cost of travel from one East African country to another. And then maybe go one step further and have, through the East African community, have discussions externally so that anybody flying into this region you know, agrees. We have a MASA as opposed to a BASA. We have multilateral air agreements with other people flying into the region so that we domesticate this travel, we encourage people to travel, we hopefully catalyze travel, economy, and as a result of which, you know, not just the aviation sector grows, but all the ecosystem around aviation will grow as a result. I think we have the population. We have already a set community that can help to proceed, you know, to encourage this kind of discussions. So this is my recommendation, and I specifically want to talk about this because I think it's important going forward, especially in this new world. If we are going to be able to encourage people to travel from one East African country to another, I think it's important for us to domesticate travel, air travel, that is.
Thanks for that, and possibly, and this is coming as maybe the last structured query. I'm sure there are so many others that I can see that are coming in the chat room. I know, and you have said some of the strategies that you are putting in place as Kenya Airways. You have said that you are very prepared to resume businesses and to start flying locally, regionally, and internationally. What is it that you think your colleagues in the region can learn from Kenya Airways going forward? Because I would imagine it's the high time now we need to compare notes more, knowing that it's a region that is affected and we may be affected different from other parts of the world. What is it? What are the lessons that you can maybe share with your colleagues in the region as Kenya Airways now going forward? What are these things you think you need to share, or you think maybe they can pick a leaf from Kenya with going forward? Yeah.
Yeah, Peter. Okay, so I don't want to arrogate myself a position to say that they can learn from us. All I can say is to share what we have done, and they can see whether that is something they would want to learn from or not. So importantly is I already shared about the issue of cash conservation, which I am absolutely sure everyone else is doing. But now it's important to take the bold steps. My recommendation is we have an opportunity to take the bold steps to transform our airlines, and as a result of which we transform our economies to do things that we were not able to do before because we were constrained by the status quo. So, for example, really looking at your base cost today and saying what is it that is hindering you from progressing because you have an unstructured or not properly structured base cost. So that is something that we are addressing. And I don't want to go into the detail of it because some of it is touches on sensitive issues, but really addressing our base cost. So most of us know that we have base costs. Our base cost is fleet costs. Our base cost is overheads, staff costs, and those kinds of things. So look at your base cost and see whether it actually is serving you well, or you need to recalibrate. And then refine also your value proposition, because right now, because we have depressed demand, we then need to look at what are we going to propose to the traveler that is different from what we were presenting before, so that we can stimulate demand. We can ask people, we can encourage people to come and start traveling. Then in our case, for instance, we had over-relied on passenger service structurally or for some reason. I already mentioned that we are gravitating a lot to cargo. We will also continue looking at other places where we can focus on. So for example, we want to grow a lot more our maintenance facility, which has been serving us well, and some of our partner airlines in the region, but we want to expand that even more. It's important because where you have a situation like we have had now, where you have absolutely no travel, then you get hurt a lot more. So just really looking at how to diversify your business and therefore de-risk the fact that you have concentrated revenues coming from a single source. And then the last one I'd like to share is increasing your productivity, both of your people and your assets. And you need to be very innovative. What we did in our case is we did something we call an ideation process, where we got to ask staff, how can we do things differently in the long run? Okay, so they came up with fantastic ideas of how they themselves can increase their productivity, and how we can sweat more their assets that we have, given that, remember, we have a compressed demand. So those are some of the things that we are working on, or we have worked on, and of course, I'm sure I can learn also some few things from the other partner airlines. Peter, if you allow me, I'll stop there.
I think it's okay. And you had said you'll be taking off after 20 minutes, and as you leave, what is your final message to East Africans and to those who are willing now to fly and start their businesses or use your services for that matter? What is your parting words for that matter?
Yeah, for me, thank you, Peter, thank you for the opportunity. So for me, I've got three very key things. The first one is that as Kenya Airways, I can say very, very, very clearly that what we are more focused on is the health and safety of our passengers, the health and safety of our crew. So everything that we do, that is the first thing that we look at, over and above the fact that we can generate income or whatever. This is the most important thing, especially in these times of COVID. So we are focusing on that, and we want to assure our passengers that when you engage with us, when you travel with us, we have taken care of that bit. And not only that, we are also looking at the ecosystem around it. We've been working very closely with the Kenya Association of Air Operators and other operators in this region. We've worked with Kenya Airports Authority. We've worked with the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Tourism, to make sure that we have developed protocols that will be safe for everybody to travel. So I'm confident that not only here within Kenya Airways, but all the other airlines in Kenya have taken the necessary precaution for people to be able to travel. So I want to welcome people back to travel with Kenya Airways and other airlines within this region because we've taken the precaution. Secondly is that there is hope. I know it looks dim, Right now, there is hope. We will get out of this. It will be a difficult several months, but at the end of the day, it will be okay. We will get out of it, and we'll be that much stronger. The third thing is that things will not be the same, not just the way we operate our businesses, but the way we fly, the way we interact, and so on and so forth. So it will be a different world, and people need to embrace this different world and to take personal responsibility, because we as airlines can do all that is possible. We have told you we've provided so many things, we've developed a protocol, and airlines are very good at sticking to rules and regulations. But at the end of the day, it is the people who travel are the ones who need to take personal responsibility to make sure that they are safe. So I think that's what I would like to share, Peter, as a parting shot.
Thank you very much, Alan, and again for your time. I wish you well as you proceed to do your first, flight as we reopen the domestic flights and others. And I assure you, from the East African Business Council, we are going to partner with all of you to do whatever it takes to make sure that, of course, all of you get back to business. Okay. So I want to thank you for this. Yeah, thank you. So I want to go to Engineer Matindi. Engineer Matindi. And I like the way Air Tanzania every time flies with Kilimanjaro, Kilimanjaro, and the reason why we get so many tourists into East Africa is because they want to come and see Kilimanjaro. And so when you carry that tag as an airline, obviously, we are proud of Air Tanzania. And indeed, that is part of now marketing our own region. But tell me now, and I'm sure you listen to the budgets of the partner states, 2020 to 2021 budgets. And of course, all the budgets were geared towards recovery, getting back into business, post-COVID. Do you think the aviation sector has been well taken care of by these budgets? Or what do you think governments or partner states needs to do more to strengthen or support aviation sector?
Thank you very much, Peter. I think when you look at budgets from the individual countries' perspective or partner states' perspective, I think there are direct and indirect issues or measures which have been taken by partner states to ensure that the
Engineer, we are losing you. Engineer.
Yeah, I lost my. I think I'm.
Yeah, we lost you. Yeah.
Yes, I'm back. Yes. So what I say is intellect to ensure that the aviation industry, the market itself goes back to the days where it used to be before the COVID-19. We have seen measures, especially indirect. When I'm talking of indirect, you started by mentioning the tourism market or tourism industry, where the key stakeholders of the aviation industry in the region. So by making sure that they have supported the resurrection, let me use that terminology, of the tourism industry, then in one way or another, you have supported also the aviation industry. Not only that, but there's a number of infrastructure development, infrastructure support, but also direct support to the airlines which are operating the region. It won't be easy, let's be realistic, to support this industry to 100%, to what really we would have wished. But I'm very much sure countries or partner states will continue developing measures to make sure that the airlines in the region, they stay and, really function the way stakeholders, customers, And all those who are using our services in the region are now satisfied, not only with the services, but also with the status of the airline in the new environment.
Yeah, thank you, Engineer. And I think what I'm picking from you is that it was an issue of balancing by governments to ensure that, of course, they keep all the sectors alive, and particularly the aviation. And I wanted to know, and that is now the next question, is that we know, of course, disruptions have been there in this particular sector. And I can assure you, it is actually all the airlines across the world that have been affected. And in fact, even revenue has been lost, jobs have not been spared, and so forth. What will be your take going forward as we talk of now recovery? What will be your take on the protecting jobs now amidst this COVID? Do you think it's a tall order? Do you think there's a possibility there are things that need to be done? How do you, are there some recommendations that you want to put across to governments to partner with you to save jobs?
Yeah, Peter, let's be realistic. Jobs will be protected if there are jobs to do. We are moving to a different way of doing business, and we have to be true to ourselves. Different relationship between supply and consumers, different relationship, the way we conduct our businesses. In fact, everything is changing, Peter. Let's accept that one. So when we are talking of making sure that people stays in their employment, we have also to look into it in all dimensions. As I said, in most cases when you have pandemic, it doesn't tell you that I'm coming. It's something which comes in differently from the previous pandemic. So ideally, to go and assure people that, guys, your jobs are protected, I don't think so. It will all depend on the dimensions in the market. Are we able to offer jobs for these people? Because when you say, I'm protecting these jobs, you mean they have something to do. Otherwise, you'll be just lying to them that, guys, you'll come back to do what? So what I see here is really will be dictated with the condition and the situation in the market. Otherwise, I find it very difficult to come and say straightforward that we will have measures to protect jobs. No, we will have measures maybe to make people think different, act differently in the new environment. And those who will accept changes, definitely they'll go back to jobs. Those who will think, differently from what people think now with the new working environment, then definitely they'll be out of jobs. Let's be realistic on that one.
Thank you. And that's what I said, of course. It is good to be realistic. It's good to be quite realistic on what is happening. And that is why we are discussing here openly as a private sector, and of course those from government who are with us. Possibly if there is a way we could work out something in a manner that saves jobs. Because at the end of the day, what determines success of any business and is the quality of services. And that quality of services comes from employees and so forth. So if there's something that we governments can do to make sure that they support our airlines, to make sure they maintain those standards, it will be a good thing. But Engineer, you may wish to tell us, and of course we are aware that Tanzania, United Republic of Tanzania opened up its airspace very early compared to other partner states. And I know you have been in business, of course, with all challenges. And that is why we congratulated you first to have taken that bold step to be in business even with all these difficulties. You may wish to tell us how Air Tanzania has adopted now to this, what you are calling the new environment between March and June, and what is the current status, particularly on international traffic? What do you foresee?
Peter, we have, as you said, opened up our airspace. The government has decided to open it up. But another thing, another dimension on it is you open up in Dar es Salaam or in Tanzania, then the other market which you are calling, which they make now the so-called international travel to exist, should open also. So unfortunately, until now, Tanzania is opened, but countries which we are doing business with have not yet opened, and we have nothing to say about it. I'm talking of Uganda, where we do flights, Burundi, India, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Zambia, and so forth. So ideally, we have opened in Tanzania, but unfortunately for Air Tanzania, that the countries which we are flying to have not yet opened, and I think they have reason for it, very good reasons. We have to be patient and wait. We continue with our domestic flights, which we didn't stop, but were affected also. I think they dropped by 75% because of some measures which were taken by the government to make sure that they address the spread of the COVID-19. So as I said, even the domestic market was affected. We went down by 75%. We are picking up now. I think we have gone now in the domestic market just beyond 60%, but well, it's increasing, and we hope it will get better. And hoping also, Kenya has already announced that it's going to open its international flights. So we hope things will change, will continue changing gradually, and afterward we'll go back to the days we used to be. I mean, the ways we used to be. So to say, to sum up, we haven't started international flight, but we had some flights, as Alan said, that you can just not sit down and wait for things to, for the dust to settle down. But we did some repatriation flights, especially India, for the nationals of India going back to India, and Tanzanian coming back to Tanzania. Zambians were flights, and we even, I think next week we have another flight to Zambia from India. We had flight to Uganda. We expected to do some more to Uganda. We are expecting another one to China. We had to Mauritius. So ideally, we had to find a way to survive. As Alan said, we did some cargo flights, and here we continue to do it. And I think has taught us a different way of doing businesses. That we have to be aggressive, more aggressive, and find other avenue which we are not thought before. That in the new environment now, we have to reconfigure ourselves and get into business.
No, thank you very much, engineer, and I like the confidence that indeed is high time we prepare to get back to business under the circumstances. And of course, I'll be coming back to you later because we would want to hear what preparations that Air Tanzania has put in place as you prepare, start going international. And I agree with you. Of course, you cannot do much internationally if one partner state has opened and others have not. And that is part of the reason why, as we leave this place, we'll be calling for a very coordinated approach in terms of we are dealing with this, particularly on recovery back to business, because one country may not be able to do business on their own without the rest. Therefore, we'll be coming that, but you'll be telling us later what message you'd want to give and confidence you'd want to give to the rest of the world, your clientele, those who are all over the world, and they're listening to you, what you'd want to tell. I'll come back to you later on that one, but let me go straight to Patrick Mwandri, and you are the CEO of Precision. And of course, one thing we have seen with Precision is the resilience of your participation in the space, aviation space, irrespective, of course, of all the difficulties that we are in. But you may wish to tell us, of course, Patrick, the effect I know is there, particularly on the restrictions of air travel to the sector in general, and how has Precision sort of prepared yourselves? How have you prepared yourselves in reference to the region, to the period between March and June? What have you been doing to make sure that, of course, you still continue, surviving in the market, and what are the effects that have been, of restrictions, particularly on travel? Patrick.
Okay. Thank you very much, Peter. Good afternoon. And I think also just wish to say shikamo to my elders. Thank you very much for this webinar that you organized.
Sorry, we can't hear you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Hello.
We can we cannot get you clearly. Yeah, please.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, now you are better. Please proceed. I hope you got my questions.
Yes, I received them. Yeah. So
thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, Peter, also for organizing this webinar, and also I think for my elders, I want to say shikamo for you. This is also one of our guests for Tanzanians. Also, thank you also for allowing us a position here to participate in this particular webinar, especially when you see the people that also are contributing are mostly your brothers, and most they are giants. But for us also, it's also going to be one of our learning lessons to see that what are the big boys doing, so that also we can see that how we can also move forward. In terms of Precision here, when you say that about the restriction that it was brought, I think everybody was affected the same, even if you're a big airline or you're a smaller airline, the magnitude of the effect, I think, is almost the same if you put it on the percentage way. So you could see that for us, the biggest chunk of it, we say that our operations really went down. I heard my brother Martini say for them it went by 70%, but for us it was about almost 80% to 90%, because we mostly depend on the touristic market, which was mostly affected compared to the rest of the other market segmentation. So we could just see that one of the biggest effects that we saw is on the revenue challenges that we had. We could not generate enough money during that period. So we had to also look for new ways to do business. And the rest of the team said we also look at that particular option of doing the cargo operations. So we also converted one of our aircraft to do what we call the passenger cargo. So we did perform some few cargo flights especially to Moroni, just to beef up our revenue. But as the rest of the team said, we also did some charter flights, especially the one for repatriation. And just also want to share with the rest of the team, even for us, that this was our first time that we did a charter flight to Johannesburg. We're going to bring some Tanzanians who were stranded there back to Dar es Salaam. But also last week on Saturday, we also did one. We took some South African to Johannesburg and then brought back some Tanzanians. So we could just see, despite that we are having this challenge of the restrictions, but we could also come up with some of the other means that we could generate some few cents there. But one of another biggest issue that has just come up with this restriction, you remember that we have some what we call the fixed and variable costs, which they are still there. So it was mostly a challenging moment for us to sit down and see that how are we going to tell these people that we still want to use their premises, especially with the airport authorities, with the other fuel suppliers that they normally provide us some services. We had outsourced some of our services, and we need to pay back for them. So this also brought a lot of challenges to deal with them. But we thank them very much for their understanding, because I think all of them, they did understand that we need one another to make sure that this business continues, so that also we can continue benefiting from it. Just as you said, for the Air Tanzania, even Precision Air, we did not stop our operations. What we did, we just stopped the regional ones due to the close down, but we continued flying the domestic routes. We reviewed our schedule, and we also looked at those areas that we still saw that there's some few demands, and we didn't want to close completely, because we knew that if we do that, we know coming back could be even harder than if we do close the business by that time. So we did continue with that one. But one of the biggest also issue that we had due to these restrictions now is how we are going to make to deal with our staff. If you reduce your operations by almost 80%, it means that even the productivity of your team is almost less by 80%. So we had to take also some measures there to see that how we can manage that one, especially the staff who were redundant. So we had to sit down and talk to them and agree on some terms. And this is come where also, as my brother Martini said, that when you ask about saving jobs, so we agreed with them some terms. So rather than having everybody at home, what we did, we applied what we call rotational work patterns. So some were going for unpaid leave while others were working, and we did that for the past 3 months. But yes, I just want to confirm that this is something that which is not sustainable if the business will not open up, because it continues to what we call to pile up your payroll cost, because now we need to pay back them when things resumes to normal. But one of the also biggest challenge that we had during these restrictions, all of us, we cannot plan ahead very much. So what we did, we are just doing like a 3-month plans, and then we review it every month. But this uncertainty. Hello, Peter.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah,
we can hear you. I can hear you, Patrick. I can hear you.
Yeah. Yeah. So with this, what is going on also for us, it was a very big challenge now to plan ahead. And as you know, everybody is expecting to see that what is going to be the way forward for the organization, also for the aviation. But you are working on the environment, which keeps on changing every time. If you remember when this pandemic started, and when we had the first case of COVID in our country, that I think it was around on the 20th of March. Yeah, I think it was before that. But that's on the 20th of March, that's when all the borders, I think they started closing, and we had now to reshape everything. Coming April, I think it was also the same. Coming May, it was worse. And now coming June, things have now started to open up. You can see for a sector like aviation, where you cannot change your dynamics very quickly, it becomes a very, very challenging when it comes to planning. But I really want to thank God, and also to thank all of my staff and even the management team for all the effort that we put together, the efforts, the ideas. And as Alan said, that we really involve our staff to give us all the ideas, just to come up and say that what can we do more so that we can make sure that this particular ship continues to float. But another thing that we also had to brought another effect that we had, it was on also creditor management. We had a lot of suppliers that we need to talk to them. We had to negotiate a lot of payment terms together. One challenge that we had is that we could not 100% commit to them to say that, okay, by this time, we will be able to clear this type of amount of money for you, this type of liability that we have with you. So we've been continuously engaging them and giving them updates on what's going on. So this was also one of the biggest effects that we also had during this period of time. But I think as the rest of my teams, the rest of the other leaders, Alan and Martin told, I think what they went through also, it also happened with us in Precision Air. Yes, Peter?
Thank you very much, Patrick, obviously for those insights and for the confidence. But of course you're aware, and as I told you in the beginning, we're going to share some of these recommendations with governments in the EAC. What is it that you can tell the partner states to do as they try or prepare to reopen the commercial flights? What are the things that you think needs to be done, in your opinion, so that we can have commercial flights make sense or make business, particularly during this COVID-19 time?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we really need together is just is what we've just done at the moment, where you call us all the stakeholders, especially the key players in the East African countries, the airlines, to work together and come up with ideas. I think this time is not a period that we need to compete by one another, but to collaborate, to see that how can we work together and come out of this pandemic. I just remember that when we started our cargo operations, that is way back in May, we didn't have so much experience on cargo operations. And also when we are looking for these customers, most of these people, they just were some small traders. So they just come with 500 kilos, another one will come with 200 kilos. But for you to do like a charter flight from here to Moroni, you need to have a minimum amount of cargo to take to this particular area. So you need to do a lot of consolidation. So we had a couple of days that we do have the business, but it was very, very low, which means that we had to turn back these traders just to tell that maybe we need to do some consolidation up to this particular day. Then we can let you know that if we can operate or we cannot. But now during that period, that's when we just come to realize that even now our friends here at Tanzania, they are doing some charter flights, but also we meet one of our colleagues in Comoro, who they're also doing some cargo operations. And what we did is say that why can't just we join efforts together, and what I've collected and what you have in your place, we consolidate them all together, and then maybe we can just allow one of the operators to do this type of operation, and then we can just share the revenue that is going to be generated between that one. So with this one also, we saw that like for us, we did some charter flight together with Eac Aviation, and some days we did with this Zone 4. There's a day also our brother Air Tanzania. Also, we did some cooperation together, and we did a charter flight together. So if you look at this cooperation, that's where you say that, okay, all of us, we can benefit of that, and we can make sure that even these customers that we want to make sure that they come to us, they can have confidence that whenever we have got our products and we want to transport them from point 1 to point 2, if I miss Precision Air, then I know Air Tanzania will be there. If I miss Air Tanzania, then I know Kenya will be there. Or if I've got some few customers in Precision Air, and if I join another customers from Air Tanzania or Kenya Airways, if we put them together, then we can operate in a cost-effective way, and all of us, we can benefit on that one. So I really want to encourage that if these cooperations can be there, but it should not only end with airlines. I think also we need a lot of cooperation with the authorities, like airport authorities, for them also to understand our cost structure. What should we do to make sure that the airline can operate? What should we do to make sure that the passengers, we can have more passengers coming to fly with us? How can we compete maybe with the ground transport, we as aviation stakeholders? Then I think through this collaboration, then we can make sure that also things can change. But also, there are some areas that also we need to collaborate, especially when it comes to training. You know, this is another area that we see that there's a lot of cost coming with it. Like for us, maybe in Kishima, we've got some instructors who can teach some of this, maybe aviation courses like CRM, DGR, but maybe our colleagues, they do not have that one. Then we can just make some classes together, and then we put some joint efforts together. Then this one is going to reduce some operating costs to both of us. So I think for me, what I just encourage for us as East African Bloc, that let us improve more on the collaborations. What can we do together to make sure that we stimulate this particular market together with other stakeholders?
Thank you, Patrick. And I think I like the point that it is not a time to compete; it is a time to work together and collaborate as of course as regional airlines, and of course that is what we expect as businesses. And of course, we know each one of you, you have your own niche at some point. We know that those good things that Precision is, of course, very good at, and so is Air Tanzania, and so is other airlines. And we need to look forward, and particularly your point on government being considerate at a time like this, particularly on the issue of the rates and stuff like that. And I think that is something that will be coming. I would be coming back to you, Patrick, because you must tell us what you think your message would be to your clientele and to the business community and to citizens of East Africa as you try to reopen. I'll be coming back to you. But may now go to, I hope the Pearl of Africa is here with us, Cornwell Mulea. And I want to invite you, Cornwell, and thank you for creating time to be with us. And you've listened to your colleagues and what they are saying. Can you tell us how you are? How is the situation like in Uganda? And how have you survived from the time the COVID started?
Well, thank you, Dr. Peter. You can hear me well, I hope. Hello, can you hear me well?
What are the something? Yes, we're almost getting you now.
Okay, fine. Thank you so much, colleagues. And yes, I have listened to my colleagues. More or less, the issues are similar to us. The issue really for us, it started on the 22nd of March when our airport was closed. We did our last flight then. So from that day, we were on ground really for the best part of 3 months. So April, May, and June was largely months where we did not do any flights. In fact, we had put our aircraft on preservation maintenance during that time because there was no way of conducting any flights. So we had to follow procedures to secure the assets so that we can use them properly at the right time. Towards the end of May, coming into June, we saw that there was opportunity for us to do some repatriation flights as well as charter flights for different customers around the region. And in other countries in Africa, we started receiving requests. So during that time, we took the aircraft out of preservation maintenance so that we could then activate the entire fleet in preparation for those flights. Our initial assessment was always that we were going to be on ground for 3 months, and after that we should be able to see a gradual opening. So that was our hope, obviously, which somehow seems to be realized in other countries, even though our market still remains to be closed. So effectively for us, it means we didn't have any revenues during that period, and it's only now that we have done some repatriation flights and charters that we are seeing some revenues coming in. The difference we had with other carriers is that for us, we were a startup. We started, our first flight was on the 28th of August last year, and therefore we're still in a startup mode where we had capital to open up routes, ramp up our network, open up offices, and get permissions to fly both within Africa in the region, as well as we have plans to fly overseas as well. So that played a little bit to our advantage because we still had some capital which we could see us through these difficult periods. So the main challenge really for us was to ensure that we secure the liquidity and conserve the cash resources that we had by limiting our expenses and being careful on what we could do during the period when we are not earning revenues. So like all the others have said, we looked at our cost structures, we looked at our the expenses and all the service providers that we had. Given that we are going to be on ground, at least based on our initial estimate of 3 months, we said we need to activate force majeure in all our contracts because this situation is something that's out of our control. So all of our contracts, we activated force majeure, which means we could limit and suspend certain expenses which are occurring monthly, and therefore we got some traction on the liquidity as a result of that. So after that, we went on a network-wide renegotiation of all our contracts because we believe that given COVID-19, we are not in as much a strong position as we would have been given the markets that are low. So therefore, we're in the process of renegotiating all our services. We can't afford to pay at the same levels that we had negotiated before the pandemic. So we expect that even our service providers should be able to share some of the pains that the industry is happening because we really can't afford to pay the high costs that we used to have. So we are still in that mode where we are trying to preserve our capacity and do the recontracting after activating all the force majeure clauses so that we can have a cost structure that we can manage moving forward. Obviously, the biggest uncertainty is when will the markets open and when will we fly again? And that uncertainty internally has caused us a lot of work in terms of planning. We have looked at several studies that have been done regarding recovery and as well as tried to make assessments of how our markets will grow. And the long and short of it is that it's a shot in the dark. We don't know how passengers will react when we come back to fly. So it called for us to take some actions as an airline. One, we have to reassure the public that as an industry, as airlines, we are safe to fly. And one of the key communications that we need to do is assure people that when they're in the aircraft cabin, they are actually in a much safer environment than if they were sitting at home or sitting at the hospitals, even in ICU, in terms of the quality of the air which the cabin gives through the HEPA filters that is there. So that is one. So we have to educate the public that really getting in an aircraft is a much safer environment than anywhere else that they can be. So we went on that communication on all our platforms in line with other carriers around the world. Secondly, we had to come with standard operating procedures that ensure that we address the risk of contamination, the risk of contracting COVID-19 when passengers pass through the airports and pass through our services as an airline. So in that, we had to draft our procedures in line with all the studies internationally so that we could bring in both the equipment, the sanitization measures, as well as the protections that is required for our passengers and our crew when they come through the airport. So that required for us to cooperate with airport authorities, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Transport, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and everybody involved in the travel trade, including travel agents, including tourism boards, so that we share information on exactly what passengers can expect when they come through our airport. I believe that is quite important for all of us in East Africa to do that because we need to standardize the passenger processing that we ensure that people have confidence in the industry as they pass through the airports today. So that is one where we had a lot of work was done, and fortunately we have come to a stage where everybody understands exactly what will happen, and we have been able to procure all the equipment as well as the sanitization materials that are required for both airports as well as ourselves as an airline. So that is one aspect which was quite good. The next aspect, which I believe some work needs to be done across East Africa, is to make sure that government understand that this is the time for us to work together in terms of being flexible on the charges that the industry is carrying. Because if you look at the studies, 2020 traffic will be down to 38% of what it was in 2019. And therefore, the revenues and the charges government have been charging at airports, they need to be reflective of their need to promote the industry to come back. And I don't believe that this message has been well understood by all of the governments in East Africa and in fact in Africa and around the world. There are certain areas where people are helping, but we have not seen actions within East Africa and within Africa up to date. So we need to send that message as airlines. Otherwise, specifically for us as a company.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yes,
proceed.
Peter?
Yeah,
Okay.
just proceed.
Okay, thank you. Otherwise, as a company, we have seen this period as one where we need to look at our business model going forward. What kills airlines normally is either the lack of a market, carrying excessive debt, which is difficult to service, the lack of a strategy, poor management practices, and probably one of the biggest ones are the systems which are weak. Most of our airlines, when we start, obviously, we start with limited resources and we compromise on some of these systems that protect us. So we have seen this period as a period where we need to strengthen those areas and invest in robust systems, make sure that in terms of financing and funding side of the business, we eliminate debt as far as possible so that it gives us a chance to set up a business which can look long-term in terms of support by the shareholders and the government. We have also invested heavily in training, and we are in a position where we are still going to be receiving aircraft at the end of this year. So we still need pilots and engineers. We had to advertise for those because in terms of the timelines for receiving those aircraft, we are receiving the first ones in December and the next in January. So we need to resource for that. So it's a period where we are investing in those services. Obviously, the only way that the investment will pay out is if we have the confidence of our customers and our brand image is strong enough to see us through to win customers when they come back. So those are the internal measures that we've been working on. And as I said, our only advantage is that we were a startup and we still have allocations of capital to allow us to continue to open. I think by way of probably a first contribution, these are some of the issues that we have looked at. Our aircraft are too small to carry large cargo volumes, and therefore we have not taken advantage of any cargo capacity that we have. We have looked at it, but in terms of costings, the numbers could not work. So we left that for the bigger carriers, and it will come to us when we have bigger aircraft in the future. So that is my contribution as a start, and thank you very much for giving us a chance to this forum.
Thank you very much, Cornwall, and I like the strategic thinking and particularly the preparations that you are saying. You have taken time as Air Uganda Airlines to start now working on some of the things, particularly the internal systems, and of course, sharpen the issues of capacity building management, and so forth. And the fact that you are saying governments, it's high time now governments, particularly for the EAC, consider working together, working together, which I think I agree with you. And now this is my next question now, given that you're saying government should. You know very well that Yamoussoukro decision, and you know very well the Freedom 5 to 9 and what it means and what it could mean for this region if at all those were implemented. And now my question to you is that to have a single African air market, transport market, or the EAC open skies policy to work, what now needs to be done to fast track this? Could maybe COVID be an opportunity to East Africa, saying possibly now taking advantage of COVID, we could start now thinking of now, implementing the Yamoussoukro decision. What is your take on this?
Yeah, thank you very much, Peter. I think my take now is that the situation indeed has changed. Because before, it was more or less like coalition of the willing, people take their time. But like I said, you can't survive as an airline without a market. So it is important for the East African market to be large enough for the airlines to survive. The first thing that we have to do, whether as governments or as individual airlines, is to make the airline strong enough to remain in business. Because currently all of us airlines are very weak. And the reason is simple. We are not earning money. We have weak balance sheets. And secondly, we don't have a market. So we need to establish a large enough market that will allow us to survive and then to thrive. So in Africa now, 90% of scheduled capacity is down. So it means we are not facilitating trade, we are not facilitating tourism, we are not facilitating communication or business. So to get that up and to enable the economies to recover, we need those airlines that remain to be able to access all the markets quickly to establish that connectivity. So I do agree with you that it makes sense now for governments to work together to see how quickly they can allow those carriers that intend to fly, obviously to fly to the points that make sense for the business to survive. So it is not necessarily saying, okay, open wholesale certain, because I believe there may be issues within governments and structures, but even within the bilateral system that we have, they should be quick to decide and allow airlines to operate. For us recently, we have been approaching countries to open up routes, but just to get designation and permissions, it takes such a long time. So we need to be flexible on these issues and make sure that ultimately we attain our goal of opening Africa totally to African airlines, because that is what makes sense for the economies of Africa to grow. That is what I believe we should do.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. I think that gives an indication, and of course now we all know that now we are facing the African free trade area, market soon. If it was not for COVID, I'm sure the African continental free trade area market would be at a higher speed gear in terms of what we would want to achieve. But I think in what you see now as Uganda Airlines, and you are saying we need to think, what is it that they need to do? Because we need some very concrete, some missions that indeed, is it practical to implement the Yamoussoukro decision, or is it a dream yet? What are the concrete position that you want to put across, possibly to support the African market, in African air transport market? And that's what I wanted to,
Okay. Yes, SATIM obviously has been a dream for quite some time. And the reason the dream has not been realized is, first of all, the airlines have not been strong enough to take advantage of the entire Africa market. Because I believe that if we had strong airlines with capital to invest, they can always ask permission to fly, and they will be given permission to fly. The only issue that would cause a limiting factor is the question of expanding fifth freedom rights and all the rest of it. So that is the area where governments have to come to a common position, is how do we go beyond the fifth freedom, beyond the fourth freedom, traffic rights, and exploit the fifth plus the other freedoms up to 9, which will be available under SATIM. So that is something for governments to sort out. And I believe if the airlines are in support, then it is going to happen. But the first thing right now, Peter, that I see is that the airlines need recapitalization. They need to survive. They are all startups across the world now. There is no airline that can call itself as established because the situation has changed, and even the funding structure and the balance sheets have been severely impacted by the COVID-19 economic situation. So for the airlines to survive, they will need the support of governments. And I believe when governments realize that they need these airlines to be strong, then they can support the issue of airlines accessing all of the markets that make sense, which necessarily means all countries will need to open up. And that is where SATIM comes in. Whether we continue to say, okay, open up through the EU, or we go on a regional basis to open up, say East Africa opens up, West Africa opens up, that becomes a matter of detail. But I think the economic structures behind the airline operations and behind countries needing to have their economies come up quickly require that the airlines be given more access to connect countries and support the business and tourism that's required. I don't know if that is a little
Fantastic.
bit more concrete than what I said.
Fantastic. No, fantastic. We'll be coming back to you later in terms of telling us, as you prepare or plan to put all those measures in place, as you have said, what your clientele will be expecting from Uganda Airlines when you reopen, at a time that I'm sure you'll have to consult with many other stakeholders to make that decision. But we'll be coming back to you later. I would want now to go to, of course, Mr. Gobena Mikael. I hope you're here, and we want to discuss about Rwanda. Rwanda Air, and Rwanda Air. We know very well that you are one of the airlines in the region that started very early, converting, of course, a passenger aircraft for cargo operations. And so now that you've been doing this, what are the challenges so far that you may have experienced with this? And if there are
yes, that's correct.
Can you hear me?
Hello. Good afternoon.
Can you hear me? Mr. Gobena, can you hear me? Gobena, are you in? Hello?
You're breaking up a bit towards the end.
Mr. Gobena, can you hear me? Are you in now?
Yes, I am in. Can you hear me?
Fantastic. Yeah, fantastic. Now, please, where you are, it's
okay.
Hear me? We can hear you. We can hear you now. We can hear you now. And thank you for creating time to come. And we want to hear about Rwanda Air.
Okay, go ahead.
We want to hear about Rwanda Air. And we are saying, we know that Rwanda Air is one of those regional airlines that, of course, changed passenger aircraft for cargo only operations. in a way to reposition yourselves, of course, so to remain in the market. And what I'm asking is, has there been any challenges to the effect now that you have changed or converted from passenger to cargo? And if at all there are any, how have you managed to mitigate those challenges? Mikhail? Gobena?
Yes, okay, thank you. I think I got that. Well, yes, of course. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, but you're breaking.
Okay,
So if you can
you can hear me.
Proceed.
Yeah.
Proceed now.
Okay, thank you. So, okay, thank you. So, as you know, we didn't do a complete repurposing. We don't have an MRO, nor we don't have the capacity yet to completely retrofit, meaning to completely to take out all the seats and do engineering work to turn an aircraft into all cargo aircraft like passenger aircraft. What we did was we used the seats as they were to load cartons and other shipments on the seat, of course, including the belly. Now, the challenge really came was that we did not have that experience. This was a new procedure. The idea came because we had to maximize the volume that we're uplifting. We needed to reduce costs, and we needed to increase revenue. So we had to go on a quick, intensive training, discuss with the manufacturer, and then, of course, because we're starting to do this, our engineers, our weight and balance experts had some challenges at the beginning, but they easily overcame them. Now, during that, of course, some seats got damaged. We didn't have the seat covers yet. So the first phase, around mid-April, about 1 week into mid-April, until we got the hang of it, that challenge existed. Otherwise, crew-wise, we still used the same cockpit. We didn't have any challenge on the crew. And once we got the hang of it, there's nothing. We can easily convert back because the seats are there. We didn't do any retrofitting. So I'd say that our challenge in that regard was very minimal. Really, it's the manufacturer's specifications were very stringent. The size, the type, the weight on each seat, how the balance would be. So that part at the beginning gave us a little. It was not really a big challenge. Our safety specialists helped us, and we got through that. So ever since that, we've been doing cargo. We've also been doing a lot of charters. We've been doing repatriation passenger flights from Europe, from India, from China, to and forth. So we've been trying to survive operationally like that. Though, of course, our entire operation has been crippled, has been minimized by over 90%. We've still managed to do that.
Thank you very much, Mikhail, I think for that and the preparations that you made for repurposing. And what I actually wanted to ask, and I know Rwanda Air is been preparing to open, and we saw this opening on from 1st of August. We want to know the preparations that you put in place for your opening. And one of the areas that you'd want you to cover is the social distancing, the aspect of social distancing in flight, and implications of that social distancing to costs of the air ticket. And even with that, whether particularly when you're operating within the region, you still consider to have the meals, in-flight meals that we always enjoy when we are flying Rwanda Air.
Thank you. Well, for preparation, we've been doing extensive preparation, especially in terms of making ourselves more efficient, understanding our internal shortcoming, doing some control improvements, trainings, seminars. We've done some realignments, restructuring, reorganizations. And so we've been doing preparation in terms of overall trying to make ourselves leaner and more efficient coming out of the dark and starting operation. As we speak this morning, I just went over our first draft video for passenger confidence that shows what we're doing. Actually, one of your questions were there for regional. If you saw the airport now, we have everything in place: the temperature, the social distancing signs, all the sanitation, the desk visors, you know, the shields, the window shields. We require everybody to wear masks. We have gowns for crew, and so we're ready to start. Both the country and the airline has invested to start. Now, for regional flights, our service, in order to minimize contact, we're taking out all paper, reading materials, and meals we've changed. We're gonna give one service, one bottled snack. We don't want to keep on having continuous contact. I know it reduces service, but here we have to look at safety for passenger and crew versus service for a while. So service, to some extent, some part of it will have to go to the back burner. Long haul, we'll also be starting some. We're gonna put one lunchbox type hot meal, so that once our customers are finished with their meal, we collect it and we don't go back and forth with that either. When it comes to materials such as headsets, materials such as what do you call this? The duvet that we give to passengers, headrest. All these are properly sanitized and resealed, and so everybody gets a new sanitized. At the end of the trip, we take it all out and put in new ones. Every seat belt, every tray, everything that's touched in the airport and in the aircraft, we've already devised mechanisms to clean it, and you'll be seeing that on the video. So we've done preparations. We're ready really to start next week. Borders are open on August 1. The first flight that goes out will go out on August 1. And the country is very ready. The country is very responsible in that regard. And we hope to come back very safe and more efficient.
Okay, thank you very much. I think, Michael, for that, and the assurance is that you put all preparations in place, and sanitizing. We would want to see how, of course, practically we start flying, how those things will be implemented, because clients, passengers will be very keen on issues of hygiene, on how you handle those, facilities you provide in flight, like the shows you are talking about and so forth. But I'm happy that you made the preparations. And quickly, we will start now getting questions shortly as we start now winding up. Before that, I know Trademark East Africa has been a key partner in trade facilitation in the region. And it has done so, in fact, gone beyond East Africa, now gone to Africa. And I know Waturi is around. Matu is here listening. Waturi, I know you are here and possibly sharing your experience and your thoughts. And from the space you are in, what regulatory principles or measures and practical steps that partner states should put in place or consider, taking, of course, a progressive reopening of the skies amidst COVID? What are these regulatory principles that you think and practical steps that partner states should consider from where you sit? And practically also telling people about this Yamoussoukro decision. What people keep on saying and saying, it has really taken a lot of time. And you've heard them say, yes, they agree that indeed going beyond the fourth freedom is okay. But when you come to implementation, that has been a challenge. From where you sit as part of the development partnership and world, what is your thinking? What is your take? Waturi?
Okay, thank you, Matthew, for giving me an opportunity to speak about this. I think first and foremost, what I've heard from all the airlines is that each partner state has developed standard operating procedures to allow for resumption of air travel. What I wonder is whether this, whether we should be doing this as EAC, is that we have an East Africa community standard operating procedure for the aviation sector. And I'm looking at this both from a passenger and from a cargo perspective. I think that is lacking, and that can only be driven by the private sector itself. You need to push the East Africa Community Secretariat to put that in place. Now, we have talked about the Yamoussoukro decision, the single air travel market for Africa for the longest time. I think we have had discussions on East African open sky policy for a very long time, but I think one of the things that that frustrates me in this aviation sector is that you are not taken seriously. It starts from there. If you look at regionally, the voice of the aviation sector from the private sector perspective is hardly there. And I think I would like to challenge the airlines. You all belong to, I think, AFRA and maybe some localized air travel associations. This is the time for you to raise your voice, for you to be able to survive the next 10 years. So that's the first thing that is missing. And when your voice is loud, when you have concrete positions that you'd like to put in place, then the government of the EAC will prioritize those specific issues. So I think it's very important and also urgent for us to put that as a priority. If you look at road transport, is always prioritized. But aviation, I think because it is perceived as a sort of a luxury, and it's not really a luxury, it's an enabler of business, I think it's important that it comes back. Some of the observations that I've made is I'm looking at this from particularly the Yamoussoukro Declaration, the SATAM, the East African Open Sky Policy, is I think these things can be done, and what COVID has demonstrated is that we have the ability to coordinate, to consolidate, to open up wider. And I've told you, Peter, myself, that I saw for the first time in maybe my entire life air cabotage within a partner state by a foreign carrier. It's unfortunate that that foreign carrier was not from the EAC, but these are the things that we should be putting in place. It shows that there's a possibility and willingness when the demand is there, but somehow we never move beyond talk. And for this, it's, no action, talk only. And we need to seriously move away from that. And I think in closing, I would like to challenge the East African Business Council. I think the interventions that we focused on the last several months have had to do with air cargo. And it's good to see that some of the recommendations that you put in place were activated and they've been implemented. Every airline that I've had speaking today, apart from Air Uganda, said that they repurposed and were able to take cargo, but that was not sufficient for any one airline, and neither was it maybe economical for them as well. But this is the time for us to rethink how we want to trade as East Africa. I like what Alan said in the beginning of the meeting, that clearly this is the time for us to have open sky policy, more consolidation, cooperation within East African airlines, and even how we treat East African airlines. But also, it's also equally important for us now to have what Alan called a MASA, a multilateral air services agreement within the partner states. But because we always have to start from home, I think let us fix East African skies first. Let us open that up first, so that we're able now to determine how we cooperate with the rest of the countries. I think this, for me, is very urgent, and it needs to be prioritized. But that it is only the private sector that can make it a priority for the governments to act. So that's all I can say in closing. Thank you.
Thank you, Waturi, for that. In fact, that is a challenge. I agree with you, to the operators and to the governments. But as you rightly said, and you are talking of consolidation, maybe during this time from March to June, could the consolidation of air freight and cooperation between EAC airlines, could it have salvaged the situation now between March and now? If they sort of consolidated issues of air freight and cooperation in particular, would that something that would have saved the situation? And again, how can the airlines now, going forward, coordinate better and promote the issues of oneness? They come from the same region. Share of course, of equitable share of both south and northbound freights. What is your take, Waturi, on this?
I think for the northbound, and this is traffic moving from East Africa to the rest of the world, maybe we could have done with a bit more consolidation and cooperation within East African airlines. But the southbound, and this is traffic coming in from the rest of the world to East Africa, that's where the biggest challenge was, is that we were not importing enough cargo there was not enough air freight cargo that was sufficient for any one airline. And many airlines would tell you that they're coming in practically empty and going maybe full or 60% full. And I think COVID presented us an opportunity to test some of these decisions that were made that we have never quite implemented. And yes, I do agree that airlines, at the end of the day, they are businesses, they're in competition, but none of them really has much experience in terms of cargo apart from the belly cargo. I'm talking about a pure cargo flight. But I think this is the time for them to really think about how do we move as a region? How do we increase imports that are coming in by air? I do recall in your position paper, you had actually requested that partner states should consider reducing taxes on cargo that is coming in by air. That way, people will move more of their cargo into the airspace, and that then sorts out the southbound cargo that is coming in. But for northbound, there could have been many opportunities, and I did see some evidence of that cooperation. For example, I do recall Rwanda Air flying to Mwanza to pick up fish to send to Europe. And there are examples of they are few and wide apart, and maybe they could have been pursued. Maybe I don't know whether they make any economic sense, but it does show that all these things are possible. I think we just need to have an honest conversation about it and to prioritize it.
Thank you, Waturi, for that. And I think these are some of the things. We are all in a situation that we were not expecting. If anyone was to ask you how the situation will be in January, if somebody was to in January 2020, how the situation will be in East Africa, they'll be telling you we are focusing on profits and growth of this much. But now the situation is different. And I think it's the high time all of us work together, government and private sector, our development partners, for the good of this region. Coordination is coming out clearly from all of you that it's the high time we need to coordinate. And now we'll go back to questions that as we close. I know we are closing in the next possibly 10 minutes. And this question goes to, of course, the panelists. If engineer, you're there, and I'm sure, engineer, you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, so what participants in this meeting are asking is the need for reassurance on safety, because safety is very key. Airlines have been parked for the last 6 months in the region. As you get back into business flying, what steps are you putting in place, possibly working closely with government to assure of safety of airspace to the public and to the passengers?
Yeah. Peter, I think one of the most safe and the secure of transport is air transport. But now, as I said, there are new dimension in the air transport, and which should be taken into consideration. And this is the COVID pandemic. Now, the way of ensuring that the travelers are safe. Crew, the cockpit and cabin crew are safe. Ground staff are safe. So ideally is to make sure that we are ensuring that our travelers and our staff are all protected against this COVID-19. This is what we are talking about. This is a talk of the day everywhere now. And just to cut it short, I think there are measures. As a country, I think we have developed SOPs, the standard operating procedures, which will need an airline or any operator in the value chain of the air transport adhering to them. Not only that, but airline like Air Tanzania has taken steps above that one to ensure that our passengers, our staff are all protected and they can travel using Air Tanzania service from wherever they go, from wherever they come from, safely with confidence that they reach their destination safe. So not only that, but I think we have also to take cognizance of the aircraft which Air Tanzania is using, modern aircraft with a very good air filtering system, apart from measures which are being employed to make sure that we get lead or rather we reduce the risk of contracting the COVID-19. So those are the few issues which I think Air Tanzania has put in place. So there's a nationwide agreed operating standard procedures, but there are airline-specific measures which will be taken, which have been taken by Air Tanzania to ensure that to bring back a faith into our air travelers.
Thank you very much, engineer. And I think for that assurance, and that's what we actually passengers and public wanted to hear about the safety measures that you are, of course, planning to put in place. And I think that builds a lot of confidence. There will be a lot of stigma and fear as we resume to flying, and therefore that kind of confidence is very important. I would want to ask you, Patrick, and I know Patrick, of course, as precision, you have a strategic partnership with Kenya Airways. I know that, and of course, possibly with other airlines, KLM and so forth. Does it mean, as you prepare to resume, Patrick, are we likely to expect any increase in air transport, ticket costs? Of course, you know, and we are aware, of course, some airlines have been given some stimulus support, you know, and this is something that is likely to take back some gains and, of course, again, prepare or affect how people do business, if at all the cost of tickets will be increasing. Patrick, please.
Thank you again, Peter. Yeah, I think if you look at our market, especially the one for East African market, it is very, very much price sensitive. So we're really going to play to see that how is it going to be the purchasing power of our customers, especially after this COVID period. We know most of them, they are being affected. A lot of businesses were closed. So really, we're going to look at that to see that if we can have an affordable way to make sure that these customers come back to us, I think is going to be the best. And this is now come what we said before, that we really need to have the collaboration from all the stakeholders, from the airport authorities, the regulatory bodies, the government. So all of us, we need to look at that to make sure that this cost does not escalate, because the more it becomes expensive, it means even this customer that we're expecting to come back to us, they'll not come back to us to fly again. So that we call upon to see that how we can continue working together to make sure that it is really affordable for all of us.
Thank you for that assurance, and I can assure you that is why majority of the participants are listening, and I can tell you they are listening from all over across the world. Yeah, I want to start listening. Want to increase price or not, and if we are assuring that there will be no increment for that matter, we don't foresee that because of COVID, then that is a good assurance.
And of course, we really want to request that even they could look further, because if you look on the other hand, as engineer said, that we as airline, we put a lot of efforts to make sure that we maintain the safety standard within our operating airlines. If you look even for us now, what we have done, we've gone extra miles nowadays. We have to sanitize all the passengers who are boarding our aircraft. We have also invested to make our own mask in our maintenance hangar for our staff. Now all the impact magazines have been removed on the aircraft, and we provide them while the passengers they board the aircraft. We've invested a lot to do the training for our staff to make sure that they do understand. In fact, even now with us Precision, we know that with a lot of people who are at home, some of them maybe they are affected by, maybe their family contacted these issues, we never know. So we've got a program that we call that employee wellness program, where we run throughout the organization to make sure that they are fit to come and save the passengers. So we really want to ask even the other government authorities, especially, if they can have the helping hand, especially for us. And in fact, also the private airlines, if you can look at us also for the second eye, because we're here to make sure that we move the economy forward. So it's a plea that rather than only concentrate to the national airlines, please also look at the other, what we call the private airlines as well.
Thank you, Patrick. And I think that is important. The collaboration, the cooperation, the partnership between yourselves and, of course, private and the governments. It's very key, very important. Cornwell, I think you could tell us. Of course, I know you still consulting on when to resume business and so forth. But of course, Cornwell, you may tell us, given, of course, the disruptions in the global, supply chains that we have experienced for the last many, and I know Uganda Airlines is thinking to go towards the direction of cargo. How do you expect then, of course, airlines now to recover? Is it something we say airlines will recover on their own without getting much support from governments?
Sorry, I didn't quite get your question on the cargo part. What were you wanting me to comment?
Yeah, I'm asking, of course, given the global value chains, and we are aware that they've been disrupted by COVID, how is the cargo business expected to recover, given that most cargo is southbound?
Okay, I understand. I think currently the reality in Africa is that 70% of cargo going in and out of Africa was going through the belly-hold capacity of the scheduled carriers. So you can imagine a situation where all the scheduled carriers stop flying. So it means that 70% capacity that used to be there is no longer there. I think the situation has only been saved by the fact that even the economies of those countries are also shut down. So the demand has come down as well. I think if you look through the figures that AFRA is giving and IATA in terms of what is available in the market out there, for the past 3 months, most of the cargo demand was for personal protective equipment, masks, ventilators, and all of them moving from either the Asian market to Europe or from Europe to America and vice versa. And all of these required large capacity aircraft, almost to the tune of dedicated freighters. So that's where the business has been. So that's why you saw airlines which have dedicated freighters such as Ethiopian. They were very busy with the cargo in that aspect because they could compete for those global tenders worldwide. So for the African market right now, first the demand has to be there. So initially when there was some demand, you saw African airlines using their passenger configured aircraft to put cargo on it, using all the available industry manufacturer recommended practices, but largely that cargo demand has dried up. So we are in a case where the majority of countries, the economies are down, industry is down, so cargo is also down. So the little that's moving is being managed through either private charters or regular charters from various reasons across the world. So I expect that when the markets open, then the capacity will also come back in line with the capacity situation that used to be there before the pandemic. The only challenge is the airlines will not be able to put up enough capacity to the 70% that was required when the economies were booming. But if you take the view that the economies will take 2, 3, 4 years to recover, then even the airlines will be able to recover within that time. So I believe that if the airlines come back, when the operations come and the industry starts to go back, both these two, the supply side and the demand side, will grow almost at the same pace to allow for this situation to be remedied. That is really my view. Because if we take a short-term view of investing in cargo capacity and the economies do not recover at the same pace, then it will be difficult to justify those investments, especially when you expect the economies to be depressed, first go into a recession, and then begin to recover slowly over the next 5 years. So that is the challenge from an investment perspective for the airlines.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, calls now to Gobena. Mr. Gobena, I hope you're online and in place you can get us. Mikhail, are you online?
Yes, I am. Please go ahead.
Yeah, please. Please. I'm asking is that how now do we expect to ensure fair play in the competition with other international airlines that are expected to fly in the region? We are regional airlines. We know our capacities. How do we expect to ensure that there's a fair play in the competition with other international airlines that are expected to fly in the region? And you know them.
Well, in my opinion, I think this has been said a couple of times, but we must strengthen our regional and international cooperation. It is vital. This is the time we have to throw away protectionism, because that's going to exacerbate all the crisis. We have to get the public, the private stakeholders, we have to make it effective cooperation, collaboration, and coordination. We have to ensure transparency, share information, go digitaless, paperless. We have to protect the shippers, the service providers, government and private sectors, and public alike, of course, have to join in technical assistance. If there's a second wave at the end of this year, we should not close our ports. We should be ready. These discussions we're having should inform us to implement better measures so that we keep our border people, the controllers, equipped to fight any kind of weather pandemic or any other kind of threat while providing the service. Otherwise, economically, we can collapse as a region. So, in my view, we have to really work together, whether through workshops, these kinds of webinars that are not wasted, but the ideas, the thoughts, the discussion that have gone be put into practice so that we are ready. That way, we're not only ready for any external threats, but we're also ready together. We have a network, we have a web to prevent our share of being eroded. Of course, there's always going to be competition. I think we're in a discussion on, I think protectionism should be avoided, but competition will always compete based on our service, our efficiency, our attractiveness, our speed, how quickly we can get different products. We discussed something about costs going up. I see it the other way. Costs are going to go down for sure. How do we expect to encourage people? I mean, to bring confidence, we have to make sure that we have to look at our customer as someone in power right now. They don't have to travel. They don't feel safe. So once you brought in that confidence, you have to give it, like, for example, in our case, we're giving bonus mileage. We're extending up to the end of December 21. We're giving a lot of flexible pricing. We're refunding without charge, first just with vouchers, then as our cash flow improves with cash. So if we work on these, I think we can contain out any threat outside of this region, whether it be onslaught of big airlines coming in, or whether it is a second wave of pandemic, or any other thing that we have not anticipated. I think just as deregulation for the low-cost carriers, pandemic will have to bring new models. So we're also going to have to adapt to that. For example, an airline can come up with just a commercial sector and everything else outsourced to be able to quickly move around. Not everything, of course. We'd have to have our own treasury, our own planning, all that, but to be able to move around much quicker. So we have to sit right on the drawing board, brainstorm, and come up with these ideas and implement them together. We should have one approach to protect ourselves, not in a protectionist way, but to protect our fair share. That's the way I see it in a nutshell.
Thank you very much, Gobena Mikhael, for that very actually business-like observations that, of course, make and motivate all of us to remain in business irrespective of all this, and the fact that the space is enough for all of us. And indeed, that is why we felt this was important. And as we come to conclude now, I want to thank you all, our panelists, for your time. You are the ones on the ground. You are the soldiers in the front line to protect businesses and to ensure that, of course, our skies open. We depend on you. And of course, passengers, East African businesses depend on you. And any support that you require from ourselves as businesses, from governments and from others, please continue communicating. I think now is the high time we need to be more customer-centric, listen to more what customers are saying, and try to, of course, change depending on the circumstances. It's not the time now to be, rigid, but of course to start now thinking differently. But more importantly, and again, we have said that our region is one. If we indeed take East Africa as one and stop the issues of competition, but see how can we take advantage of this East African, market, I'm telling you, we'll be okay. There are some countries, China and so forth, you find there are so many different airlines, and they're all in the same market. So ours are not as many in the region, and I'm sure if we can coordinate and work together, it becomes very easy going forward. I'm sure governments are also listening. We'll be also submitting some of these things to them. What is coming out clearly is that, of course, all of you as airlines, you are all prepared to reopen, to hit the skies, and that is something quite motivating. And of course, the issues of preparations. You've talked about the listening to what customers want, working closely with government, talking to one another as businesses and as partners. We are not competitors, but partners, and remain a strong voice of private sector in the region, because a strong voice in the region will be respected. And some of the issues that we bring out as a strong private sector, government would address them. Treaty is very clear. When you look at the articles of the treaty and talking about harmonization of most of the issues, we don't have a choice. We may have to coordinate. We must harmonize. When you look at both Article 124 of the treaty and Article 131, they're talking of collaboration and coordination in most of the issues as we do business. And I think that's what we are looking at. That's what we are focusing at. I want to thank all of you. We'll be sharing the report of this to each one of you and to our members. And I'm telling you, we'll be picking some of the policy discussions picked from this meeting and share with governments. And hopefully, as you prepare, it will be, let's do together. Let's do together. I'll be very keen to see some of the maiden flights. Please make sure that you invite us as your apex body, East African Business Council. We'll be happy to participate. We'll continue working together. I thank all of you, each one of you, the panelists, the participants, for taking time. We remain, of course, listening, and we are preparing to rebound and get back to business without of course, issues. But that will be possible if we become more coordinated, in coordination. And now I think you need to share among your airlines, among yourselves, to have a sort of harmonized procedures for resumption for airlines, for example, at the EAC level. You say these are the standards that we're going to use at the EAC, and that becomes very easy. And it even gives confidence, because whatever standards Kenya is using is the same standards Air Tanzania, Precision Air, Rwanda Air, Uganda Airlines is using. That gives a lot of confidence. And I'm sure once we use the same standards, particularly for COVID and even issues of safety, you'll be assured that market remains intact. We don't want a situation where clients start now inclining towards a particular airline because their standards are different. So I would encourage all of us to move towards that direction. I thank all of you for your time. Asanteni sana for taking a lot of your time. I know CEOs are very busy people, and I can imagine. But I also thank you because you take your business seriously. That's why you have taken a lot of time to obviously be part of this. Thank you very much and have a good afternoon. Let us keep safe. We will continue watching the space as you reopen. And I can't wait to see when the regional airspace is opening. I want to travel from Nairobi to Kigali very fast. I want to travel from Dar es Salaam to Uganda very fast. And we are looking towards this. And even Uganda, as you prepare, as you plan, we wish you well. Thank you very much and keep safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you very much. Bye-bye. The directors of EABC who are here, thank you very much. And of course, all of you who are here. Asanteni sana.
Thank you too. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye. Bye. Thank you.